everyone. This is Power N Blaso. Today, I have an amazing guest. His name is Jaeden Clark. He's on TikTok. He expresses a lot of cool ideas. And today, we're going to be talking about Black people and individualism. Here we go. Cool. Hey, Jaeden, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing great.
All right. Thank you so much again for being here. I saw you on TikTok. Obviously, I follow you. I love the ideas that you express and the way you get into it. Yeah, of course. The first video I saw, you were actually talking about Black people and individualism. And here it is.
It's occurred to me recently when people were talking about, white culture, do white people have culture, Black culture, all that. Because race isn't a huge hindrance on white people's lives, at least in a systematic manner, they're able to just grow up and pick what kind of white person they want to be. Think about if you're trying to stereotypically portray a white person, there's so many stereotypes you could pick. You can pick an alt girl, a visco girl, a preppy boy, a country boy, the surfer girls and gals. The list goes on and on. But notice how all of these things are based on hobbies and not race. Because white people don't have to worry about race within society, they can define themselves through the things they like to do. Black people, however, do have to worry about race, so their identity is almost completely encapsulated by their race. I guess you could say that Black people have some of these hobby groups, but they're basic. They're like sports and anime. Anyway, one could say that this is why Black culture exists. If I'm Black and you're Black, there's a 99% chance I know exactly how your mother talks because she talks exactly like mine. If I'm Black and you're Black, there's a 99% chance I know exactly what type of music they play at your cookout because they play the same at mine. One could say it's bad because it makes so much of our lives about race, but good in the sense that it creates such a strong community.
Right, so yes, that was a really interesting idea and it was a great take. But before we get into the interview, I want to test you. You said you are 99% sure you know what my mom says. And I want to be sure that we're on the same page with that. So here, I have some scenarios and you can fill in the blank. All right, first one. You're sitting in the back seat.
All right.
You're in your mom's car. You think to yourself, some McDonald's would sound really good right now. You say to her, hey mom, can I please have some McDonald's? What does she say?
She would quickly and snarkily say, do you have McDonald's money? And we have home.
All right, okay, that's technically 2 points because you added and we have food at home. So that's 2 points right there, okay?
All right.
Next one, you and your mom, you're walking into the store, you guys pull up. You're having a jolly good time, you think nothing of it. But before you go into that store, what does she say to you?
Okay, well, she would say, before we get into the store, you better not touch anything, don't look at anything, and just behave yourself.
Exactly, you have to have a full speech before you go in. Saying don't touch anything is not enough. We have to have the full speech. Okay, the next one, you just got through playing outside with your friends, you had a jolly good time, okay? You walk in, you walk past your mom, she gets a sniff. What does she say to you?
She says you smell like outside. She says take off your outdoor shoes. The whole ordeal.
Most definitely, and definitely not in a nice way. No, she says you smell like outside. She grimaces and everything. And the last one, you can fill in the rest. Stop crying.
Oh, before I give you something to cry about.
So that's how it goes, and I kind of like that about, I feel like Black people, like, we have a community and we definitely have a culture, and I like that we're able to connect on that level, but I can definitely see how that can be a hindrance on our individuality. How do you think Black culture impacts, individualism?
Okay, so I feel like before we get into this conversation, it's important to establish that, identity and individualism are completely inseparable. Yet they are two different things. So I will talk about identity probably pretty often throughout this whole call, but I want to make sure that you that everyone here understands that they're two different things, yet you can't have a conversation about individualism without bringing up a conversation about identity. So the thing about Black culture is that in America, especially Black Americans, and when I say that, I mean, you know, descendants of slaves in America that are Black. And the thing about that is that our Blackness has become such a incredible part of our identity, and it's become it's become a lot of our identity, essentially. And the reason for that is essentially that a lot of the other aspects of identity that, you know, are granted to white people have been denied from us. So that because of that, we end up identifying a lot with our Black part of our identity. And because of that, we created a culture around this idea. So I feel like it's great that we have such a strong community in this political environment that we are in. Eventually, I'd hope we progress to a point where, you know, that doesn't have to be the case. But at the same time, I do love our culture. I do love our community, and I feel like it's almost kind of recreating what was taken from us in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So, like, when I think about why it would be, I guess, a hindrance, because, you know, people talk about Black culture all the time, and, you know, how intrinsic it is, how, you know, we just had this conversation, the little questionnaire earlier where, you know, we're on the same page. It's very fun. It's very nice to be included in, but, you know, it's rooted in a history of oppression, essentially. That's where it comes out of. And, you know, it has its pros and cons. I in terms of what I think, if it's better that we have it or worse that we have to have it, I don't know exactly how I'd weigh that, but it's definitely an interesting phenomenon that needs to be talked about, and that people who do have the privilege of individualism need to acknowledge.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I can see the pros and cons of that as well, and how we can be so stuck in the middle. One part of it, like you said, it is beautiful because, like, we, you know, made that culture out of our suffering here. And it's something that we are able to take joy in and take pride in. The only issue I have sometimes is that it makes it harder to step outside of the box. I feel like our race definitely has like a construct. What is your take on that?
Yes. See, that's where the problem gets the biggest, because the TikTok that you ended up showing, and I know the TikTok you're referring to, there was a lot of comments on that TikTok talking about, oh, you know, if that's the case, why don't you just, you know, do you know, just, you know, live your life and don't care about race. And it's not that easy. One, race is a big part of our lives, given that we're oppressed on the basis of race every day. But other than that, it's just the fact that if we don't fit that conformity, we get people from even our own race and other races telling us, why are you acting white? Why are you acting this and that? And that's where the problem really starts to manifest. And it seems as if we're stuck, right? Because, you know, it already takes enough confidence to be able to, you know, go outside of this box that we kind of have put ourselves in, if we want to say it. And when you build up you muster up the courage to kind of be yourself, if that makes any sense, and then you're immediately denied your Blackness, that's very discouraging. And it's probably one of the worst aspects that derives from it. I'd like to see that go away very, very soon, because we can, they're not mutually exclusive. You should be able to have a Black culture without, you know, having to deny being able to be yourself. You should be able to do the certain things that you like to do the certain hobbies that white people are allowed to do without them being said, oh, you're trying to act white. Like, no, they're able to do any hobby they want, essentially, and then they're told nothing in terms of the basis of race, at least. So it's just like, we should be able to indulge in our own culture if we want to confide in it, but at the same time do our own hobbies and go out and be ourselves, essentially.
I totally agree. And I've definitely had like firsthand experiences with that. Me, I'm a theater chick. I love it so much. I like doing things like this. I don't know, like the stereotypical things that people like to put on Black people, I don't like to partake in. And so you get called things like, you know, you're Blackish, you act too white, you're an Oreo. So I can definitely see how that suppresses us. And I can kind of see how like both, you know, white people are non-Black people and Black people kind of encourage that. Do you feel like the media kind of like pressures us to kind of like be in that, or kind of enforces that ideology?
The media definitely does play a big role in it. But before we get into that, you shared a personal anecdote, so I feel the need to do the same. I definitely experienced that a lot, especially, once I started my TikTok account, talking about race a lot. It's so very interesting how that's come about, because all of middle school, I grew up in a middle school that was probably 99% white.
Middle school sucked. Yes, exactly.
99 in like my elementary school, I've had like maybe there was only like maybe 2 classes all of elementary school to middle school in which I had another Black student in my class. And we had and it was a big middle school. It wasn't like a small school. It was a big middle school. So I didn't have many Black students in my class. I obviously have always been, kind of more academically, sanctioned in my head. So it just always manifested the idea of, oh, Jaeden, you kind of act white sometimes, this and that. And, I feel like in high school, I've kind of like taken that and mastered the code, like the code switching. But it definitely was something that, did make me double think about my own Blackness and how I'm supposed to act, if I'm supposed to show my intelligence outside, am I supposed to closet it and act as if I'm not as smart as I am, things like this. And the same thing with you. Are you supposed to closet your love for theater because you feel as if it's not Black enough for other people? Those things just, it's just hard to deal with. But in terms of your question about how the media plays a role in this, it absolutely does, right? And it's always kind of a double-edged sword, and this conversation is always hard to have because there's like good parts of it and bad parts of it, right? I'd wish to live in a society in which a Black person can make an accomplishment and the title Black wouldn't have to, go in front of their name. But it happens, we don't. And it's good, and it's good. I understand why it happens, right? You're empowering other Black people to want to do the same because we happen to live in a society where that's needed. I wish it wasn't, though. So it's like, I completely understand why we'd have to say first Black woman vice president, you know what I'm saying? And I encourage it to keep happening, whatever. But I hope we progress to a point in which those titles aren't so intrinsic to our character.
Most definitely. And I love that point you brought up too. And that's something that I've been thinking about as well. I think, I don't know how to word this. I feel like people expect so little of Black people. So like whenever like we make an accomplishment, they like to make it like such a big deal. And a part of me is like, yeah, you should make it a big deal because we're Black. But I feel like the reason that they're making it a big deal is rooted in a toxic kind of mindset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely is rooted in a history of like, oh, you're a credit to your race. You have exceeded what your race usually does, and because of that, you are a special version of everyone else. When that's just not the narrative that we're trying to push, right? We're trying to push that, oh, this is a Black person being successful, just like all other Black people can be. But what white people hear that as, or other people hear that as, are, oh, this is a special Black person that is different than the rest. And that's not.
Yes, you're different. That comment gets on my nerves. Oh, you're not like other people. You talk properly, whatever. You're different. Exactly.
It really gets tough when we try to empower ourselves, but then instead of them realizing that we're trying to empower all of us, they just take that as an example of, oh, this is the epitome of Black success, but this isn't the realistic idea of what Black people are, and this is really what they are, and that's just not the case.
How can we embrace our culture, while still, pertaining to that whole individuality aspect?
Yeah, it's definitely a hard question to answer, and I don't think we've quite tackled it on this. I've kind of danced around it because it is definitely hard to do, right? There's this whole aspect, like in the beginning of this show where you asked me all the questions, that there's that aspect that I feel like we can still keep, right? We can still have this aspect of, and I feel like it's definitely a little bit more prevalent in my parents' generation and our parents' generation, where it's like when you see another Black person, in any public area, especially if it's a majority white area, you acknowledge them, whatever that may be. It might be a head nod, whatever it is. But, it's just that sense of community, that sense of deeper connection that you have with them because you understand that you're going to be seen the same in the eyes of, the system. Mm-hmm. It's that we should keep tight. You know, it's that we should continue to hold. It's our proudness of our color. It's not being ashamed of it, right? But in terms of wanting to be yourselves, we kind of have to break this narrative, I guess, in our own minds that, you know, a Black person can't, you know, act white. We shouldn't be perpetuating a notion in which, oh, you're acting white, you know, all this other stuff. We shouldn't be doing that to our own members of our community. If a person of our community is trying to do a hobby, they genuinely enjoy it. They're not trying to do it for any other alternative motive to, like, you know, pander to white people. They just genuinely enjoy that activity. We should support them 100%, even if it's not what I guess most Black people do. So I feel like once we do that, we can really tackle the biggest issue, because identity is probably one of the hardest things that Black people have to face within our society on terms of an every day-to-day basis, right? Obviously, systematic oppression and all those things are, you know, rooted, and they come in other ways than not. But when we talk about everyday life, identity will manifest for every single Black person in this country one way or another. And it just doesn't for other groups of people. So I just feel like once we acknowledge that, once we set that precedent of we can have our community, but we have to understand that members of our community each have their own interests. Once we establish that, we can truly get somewhere as a community.
And beautifully said. I like that. I like the solidarity, and just supporting them, like, no matter what, and not expecting them to act like the blueprint for what a Black person is supposed to be. Thank you so much for being here on the show. Is there anything else you would love to spread awareness on before we close off? Again, you're a really good speaker, so whatever you need to say, let it out.
Thank you. I guess just one thing is, just whatever, for any Black people, I guess, listening, just whatever facet of life you enjoy the most, I say go for it, right? And because this is a big problem within our community today, especially within, you know, Black men within our society. You know, we've been, you know, stripped of our ethnic culture. We've talked about that. We're kind of stripped of our nationality because, you know, me saying, oh, I'm a proud American, what does that even mean at this point? So we can't really identify with our nationality, can't really identify with our ethnicity. But here's another issue, right? When they put us in areas, in ghettos, where we all look the same. So to a certain degree, if you're interacting with Black people every day, you're almost racial. You're the types of things that you identify on a racial level, your racial identity kind of fades around a little bit. So because of that, you almost feel almost no identity. So a lot of Black males within our society, because of that, they try to find a sense of community and identity in other ways, such as, you know, gang-related activities. And that's the reason why you see them happen, right? The biggest you know, presence of gang-related activity happen in areas where they have redlined or ghettoed Black and brown people in a similar area. And then they just make it so that these Black, and then they, you know, obviously put us at a lower socioeconomic stance when the country was being founded. And because of that, these people feel as if they have no community, have no belonging to, so then they create these dangerous situations for themselves. And that's why we see such a big problem within our United States in terms of gang violence and everything in our own community. And it's rooted in this idea of wanting to feel a community, wanting to have an identity. And it seems like America and the system is constantly cutting those off from us. So then that's what we turn to. And I venture that we all, you know, stay true to our racial identity if you feel as if you have nothing else. And, you know, try to really find your interests, because, you know, you see people all the time, see celebrities all the time talk about how they were in a bad situation. They were in, you know, gang-related activities, but they found their interests, they went with it, and, you know, they're off. So I feel like that's a good thing to keep in mind if you're ever having this identity crisis and you feel a need to kind of join a dangerous group.
Go off. Yes, that was nice. Thank you so much, Jaeden, again, for being here on Power N Blaso. This is it, everyone. Bye.
Bye.